The intention of this is to make sure that Thomas Cooper doesn't vote. Black, 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 black. This is disgraceful.
The voices of the feelings of innocent children.
Well, you know what, honey? Silence is golden. You should keep your mouth shut.
Going now to shut down DDU. DDU is a Supermax sensory deprivation unit which was created by Larry Du Bois, the advisor to Abu Dhabi. If we're going to change Guantanamo's and Abu Dhabi's, we've got to change the prison system of the United States. Or what they'll do is they will close Guantanamo, they will close Abu Dhabi, and they'll open another one under a different name, the same way they do it here with prisons in the United States. When the court tells them that the prison is a human disaster and to close it, they close it. And then they change its name. And it's business as usual. We have to address the prison issue in the United States if we want to address Guantanamo and Abu Dhabi.
Stayed here for 2 hours and it was hot, it was really difficult, it was suffocating. What made me going, just thinking about what's happening to the prisoners in Guantanamo Bay or Abu Ghraib prison. And imagine, I know we're going to go home after this rally, I'm not going to wear this 24 hours, but they would. We know that Bush administration has done a superb job for keeping the case of the prisoners, especially in Guantanamo Bay, quiet. Not many people know about it, and we have 2 reasons, 2 goals for this project. One is public education, let people know what's happening in Guantanamo Bay. People are being tortured, people have no right to speech, no, they don't have a right for legal assistance. They haven't charged them yet, and we are requesting the freedom of Guantanamo Bay detainees unless they have a charge, criminal charge against them, which they haven't this last 2 years and 8 months since invasion of Afghanistan. They've been being held with no charge, and so this is just a matter of public education.
I think Abu Ghraib got slipped in there too, but do we want them to close down Abu Ghraib? Yes, that message is already in there. End the torture of prisoners. Do we want John Kerry to end the torture of prisoners? John Kerry, we the people want you to end the torture of prisoners. Charge all prisoners or release them. Do we want John Kerry to charge all prisoners or release them? Do we want John Kerry to restore the rule of law in this country, restore the Geneva Conventions, the 3rd and the 4th Geneva Conventions, which this country signed and ratified and has the force of law in this country? Do we want him to restore the Geneva Conventions? And last but not least, the Bill of Rights. Do we want an end to free speech zones? Do we want an end to helicopters drowning out rallies? Do we want an end to roundups and arbitrary searches on the MBTA? Do we want the Bill of Rights back? Yes! John Kerry, we the people want the Bill of Rights back. We'll make sure he gets this message. Thank you very much for coming. Full court and send it to the Senate for ratification. Yes! All right. We'll have a write-in. We'll have a write-in and send it to John Kerry as well. Thank you.
We're doing this street theater action today down by the so-called free speech protest zone. Right now we are making signs that have each of them have a single issue sort of statement on them, such as homelessness, police brutality, globalization, capitalism, whatever, war on drugs, different things like this. And we have a bunch of people dressed as prisoners, basically, whether that's actual prisoners or people who are imprisoned by various things in this society. And they're going to have black blindfolds on. Basically, it's going to be the people presenting these issues that they are concerned about or are angry about, or issues that are causing them to suffer in some way. Going to be presenting them to people dressed in business attire and a couple people in army getup, whatever, trying to show that as we've been trying to voice these concerns about specific issues, especially now in the elections, that have found that there isn't really a representative who is addressing these issues according to what people are concerned about and what people are, worried about and want to change. So I guess that's basically the idea, that neither Bush nor Kerry are sort of addressing, both of them are in support of the war, both of them are for free trade, both of them are not really going to do much good in terms of the poverty and in terms of people's well-being, both domestically and foreign affairs and whatnot. Just drawing the connections that whoever it is, they're clearly not representing the people's concerns, and just trying to specifically show what those concerns are through this highly colorful sort of artistic representation of it.
Stay in line! Today we're brought to you by Enron.
We also have a banner that is going to be a backdrop to it. It says DNC, Democracy Needs Cages, ? Sort of just showing that, this is a time when, there's this convention going on, the Democrats are all here, advertising themselves, campaigning, whatnot, and this is supposed to be something to rally people's support, something to get people excited and involved in it, and yet they're creating an environment in which if people want to have a dialogue with them or want to talk about issues or show their support or not show their support, you have to do it behind a fence, you have to do it in a cage, you have to do it in a way in which you're not even being heard in any way, and just to show the absolute ridiculousness of that situation and how ironic it is.
I just wanted to state my outrage that both Bush and Kerry support the FTAA and other free trade agreements, both for the benefit of corporations. That means that people both here and in the entire hemisphere, soon the world, are going to be losing their jobs and livelihood.
Well, you know what, honey? Silence is golden. You should keep your mouth shut.
A goddamn commie, ain't ya? Don't like the American system, don't like the American way. Well, we know what we do with people like you.
Throw her into the cage.
Into the cage! What?
Push and carry on. Skull and bones. Push and carry on.
Skull and bones!
Push and carry on.
Skull and bones!
Push and carry on.
Skull and bones!
What do you think about that happening?
I respect
think that the fact that they have First Amendment rights, but they are not delegates, they do not have the right to come in and be disruptive with our convention to make their point. They may stand out on the street, they may write letters to the editor, they may do a number of things, and you know what? Some of us may agree in part with a lot of things that they're saying, but they don't have the right to come in and disrupt our proceedings and our business. So that's what I think about it.
I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, ain't gonna study.
We didn't know what Biolab 4 meant, and we were told by Mark Klempner, don't worry about it, it's safe, we do these things all the time, so we were like, okay, cool. So we left. Maybe about a month later, we got another phone call saying that there was another community meeting. Most of that one was with scientists and chemists, so we went anyway. And when we went there, there's about 85 professionals that were there. And we asked Mark Klempner that, you know, folks don't understand what you're talking about. We couldn't understand what they were talking about. So all they kept saying was like anthrax, Roxbury South End, and then Ebola, Roxbury South End. But they were saying other stuff, but we couldn't understand what shit they were saying. But we understood enough that they were saying that Roxbury and South End were getting these diseases. So one of the residents said, listen, we need to find out what this is, because a lot of people think you're talking about a blood lab. And so he says, listen, if you can get some competent residents to sit at the table, I have no problem. Then he turned his back towards us and said, well, you have a PhD, let me talk to you. So from that point on, we were very embarrassed. We went downstairs, pretty much cried, and we held hands, and we said, you know what? We're going to tell everybody and their mama about this bio lab. When we first went out, people thought we were just BSing and they wouldn't listen to us. Once BU got that 1.6 billion, that's when people realized that what we were saying was true. So everybody and their mama just about knows about this bio lab, and we're gonna kick some ass.
I'm with ACE, that's the biggest group, Alternative for Community and Environment, but I really work at REAP, Roxbury Environment Empowerment Project. That's who I'm with today.
All right, now what is the issue you're tabling over here? What's the main thing you're trying to get across today?
The main issue that we're talking about is the biolab, the bioterror lab, that's going to be built in the heart of Roxbury. And that's basically the main issue, because if you got a big lab coming into the heart of Roxbury, which is basically urban community, you know, with its black and Latinos, basically all black and Latino population. And, you know, there's a highly population of those kind of people here. So, you know, we're just trying to get the word out basically to, you know, everybody, Secretary Hirschfeld, just everybody, just, you know, what's really going on. We really care about the issue.
This bio lab really just shows to me, and it should show to everyone, that these politicians are valuing profit over people. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm sure I can speak for everybody else when I say that there's no reason why you should put a bio lab, a bioterrorism lab, with agents that we don't know and there's any cure for, in a highly populated area like Boston. It just don't make no sense. I just want to say that one of the main things that some of these politicians, like James Kelly, like Michael Ross and Flaherty, some of the things that they run with is that it's going to bring jobs. But when you think about who the jobs are going to be going to, these are scientists. These are people who are going to have PhDs. These are doctors. You're going to need an associate's degree to take out the trash. These are not jobs that's going to be going to anybody in this community. Believe that.
People, the Boston Public Schools, which are in need of structural repair, to say nothing of the technical staff and books and curriculum support that's needed. Can you imagine what this city would be like if we could take that energy, that skill, that cunning, that got the biolab to this stage where we have to fight to stop it? It moved it that quick. If that energy was focused on making our schools better, can you imagine what this would be like? We have to stop studying war, and that's what this is about, studying war. And you know, we have some really good public officials who are going to help us to try to put an ordinance through to stop this, but they're going to need to override a veto by the mayor. And they're going to need a backup. And that backup is you taking hands and using your body to stop it.
You know, George Orwell said, war is peace. As part of his lexicon of doublespeak. The Department of Homeland Security wants to tell us that by waging more war, we will get more peace. They want to tell us that by having a bioterrorism lab located in an urban center of almost 5.5 million people is somehow going to protect the people. In their literature, they say it is so they can study such viruses, bacterium, and toxins as botulin, anthrax, syphilis, Ebola, Hanta, SARS, and so on. I have to wonder, don't they really know all they need to know about those specific types of viruses? I mean, how much more can you learn about botulism? Doesn't it stand to reason that perhaps maybe what this is for is to engineer new types of viruses, new types of weapons?
We need more sex in the White House, more sex in the White House, more sex in the White House, but let's keep them on their knees. We need more sex in the White House, more sex in the White House, more sex in the White House. It's on that bar between their knees. We could eliminate preemptive action if we focus more on the satisfaction of the heads of state. No, it's not too late to disarm them missiles and alleviate the pent-up frustrations that seem to create premature ejaculation on some other state. So let's see.
I'm gonna tell you a story. I'm gonna tell you about my town. I'm gonna tell you a big fat story, baby. It's all about my town. Yeah, down by the river, down by the banks of the River Charles. That's what's happening, baby. That's where you'll find me.
satisfaction in me. A little more fight, a little less fun. A little less fight, a little more fun. Close your mouth and open up your heart and maybe satisfy me. Satisfy me, baby. To the summer breeze. It's a grooving night and I can show you how to use it. Come along with me and put your mind at ease. Less conversation, a little more action. All this aggravation ain't satisfaction in me. A little more fight, a little less fun. A little less fight, a little more spark. Close your mouth and open up your heart and maybe satisfy me. Satisfy me, baby. Come on, baby, I'm tired of talking. Your coat and let's start walking. Come on, come on. 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 All this aggravation ain't satisfaction in me. Grab your coat and let's start walking. Come on, come on. 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 Come on, come on.
I'm too sexy for my love. Too sexy for my love. Love's going to leave me. So sexy it hurts. And I am too sexy for Milan. Too sexy for Milan, New York and Japan.
racing with the wind, and the feeling that I'm under. Yeah, darling, go make it happen. Take the world in a loving embrace. Fire all of your guns at once and explode into space like a true nation's child. We were born to be wild. We can climb so high. I never wanna die. Born to be wild. Born to be wild.
Well, the idea came to me. My friend Patrick Dillon, who's a filmmaker, was in Baghdad prior to the war and through the first week of the bombing, and then he came back to New York at the end of April, weeks after the major combat operations had ceased, and he informed me he was going back to Baghdad. I produced exhibits at the Puffin Room in the past, children's artwork dealing with war, the war in Kosovo, and as well as drawings by children from Spain, from the refugees from the Spanish Civil War in the late 1930s, fleeing Franco's persecution after the Republic was defeated by the fascists. So I knew the emotional impact of drawings, children's drawings in particular dealing with war. So I told him my idea. I commissioned him. We went shopping. We bought pads, pencils, and crayons, paper, and off he went. I saw him off on a street corner in Soho, and he was off to Baghdad again. At the end of June, I got a phone call. He told me he was back in New York, and he had the drawings, and they came in a little shoebox, and opened it up, and it was like a miracle to see these drawings, to see this communication directly from the children of Baghdad.
Yeah, well, you know, the children's art, tells us something about the war which nobody else can tell us, and tells us right there from the people who are suffering from the war. And so I hope more and more people around the United States will see it. I mean, we'll get to feel how these children feel about what we are doing there in Iraq.
I see so much bombing, so many things that the newspapers haven't been telling me about.
It just brings that home, the fact that such a young and large group of people have been tainted and poisoned by something so violent, and something that we are kept from seeing because it's totally sanitized and not portrayed properly through the media.
More than 30,000 rockets and bombs were shelled upon Baghdad in that 2-3 week period, which is an incredible amount when you think about it. And of course, with our embedded media, we really received virtually no information on the impact on civilians and on children in the war.
One thing that struck me is it seemed like some of the kids were very conscious of the media portrayal of, I mean, there's that one that explicitly has the TV.
Of the American TV journalist, with her cap and her fashion bag, and she's posing, and with her bodyguard behind her, and they just captured the ultimate, the complete stupidity of network journalists, and they're complicit. They're war pimps, and that's obviously one of the big problems we have here in this country is that we don't have an independent media. We don't have a media that asks the hard questions, and they allowed this war to happen as much as the Congress did.
I was a bombardier, and I dropped bombs, including napalm, towards the end of the war in a little village in France. And I can tell you that I and the other people who were dropping these bombs had no idea about what was happening to human beings below. But the human consequences of war are missing, as someone said, they're missing in the news reports. They're missing in the briefings that the officials give. And so it's enormously important to have, yes, the sketches, the voices, the feelings of, yes, the children who are experiencing these bombings, so that we can get a sense of what war is.
It raises a lot of questions, and it's very disturbing, and I think people should be disturbed by these questions. So.
Personally, I was really impressed by the exhibition. I think it's a good idea because it provides a different point of view that is not usually seen through the television, news, or other sources of information. So I think it's kind of like it gives it like a personal touch. So I think it makes it more in some way more effective.
Well, I think one of the reasons why it was such a powerful exhibit because it's so raw and untainted. I mean, most of these kids are under the age of 13, and it really depicts how different our lives are. I mean, for us, the war is on TV and we turn it off, and as soon as we turn it off, you can easily forget it.
And how old are you?
10 years old.
So you're about the same age as some of the people that are making the drawings here. What do you think about the drawings?
I think that they're really powerful, and they show their feelings so much. And I noticed that they had a lot of blonde girls, and I'm wondering about what that message that they're sending us by drawing the blonde girls in the Iraqi situation.
And do you know anybody else around your age that is going to be here tonight?
No, I haven't seen another kid here.
Do you think that, I mean, I see a lot of adults and grown-ups here. Do you think that kids should be out here learning about this stuff too?
Definitely. I think that they should be able to understand what their country is about and what's happening around them. I think that their parents protect them too much from the war and everything that George Bush is doing. And they should know that because kids my age, in 8 years, they're going to be voting, and they could make a decision. It could change their decision if they see this.
It's quite an important thing for people to see how children are expressing themselves in Iraq. And I also would just like to say that my family's from El Salvador, and I'm seeing some surprisingly striking similarities from the art that was coming from El Salvador, from the children of El Salvador during the 80s when the Contras were invading Nicaragua and the death squads were massacring people in El Salvador. And you saw paintings a lot like these, and it's just really sad to imagine that children are being subjected to a reality like this.
And it's interesting because a number of years ago, 1989 or 1990, I had traveled to El Salvador, where Cambridge has a sister city in northern El Salvador. And we brought back drawings from the children of El Salvador, and they hung around these very same walls. And children in Cambridge came and looked at those images and responded to those images very similarly. And I feel like that was very much part of the movement that ended the U.S. support for the war in El Salvador. Part of our opposition to war, this one in particular, is knowing how much both we need those resources and those funds back in our own cities for our schools and for our homes, but also if we glorify violence on the national level, we reap violence on the local level.
I mean, when I think about what these kids went through, it's just It's a crime, and the people who perpetrated this war upon them are criminals, and they should be brought to justice. And hopefully that justice will be in the November election at least.
Time to lay down serious sound.
The spirit of justice is bust is exposed, and Johnny was in distress.
Many of you know last week my words was taken down from the House of Representatives because I said that we had an American-style coup d'etat. And it did happen. More people in the country went to the polls and voted for Al Gore, and more people in Florida. In my district alone, 27,000 voters was disenfranchised. And that has nothing to do with the felon list. But let me say something about the felon list. I want to correct you there. On that list, they took out African Americans because we have similar names like Corrine Brown, Joe Brown. The system was flawed. They just took them all off. And we didn't have a way for people to vote. We have provisional balloting, but in Florida, it's always in the details. If you're in the wrong precinct, your signature doesn't match. So we've got problems as we go into this election. I want to thank Michael Moore because he has really energized the community. Energized the community in the sense that everybody is watching Florida. Eyes are going to be on Florida. You know, I have gone around the world monitoring other people's election. I've been to Africa. I've been to Haiti. I've been to Russia. But right here, we've got the shine our light on Florida, and I want to thank you for what you're doing. I want to thank Michael Moore for agreeing to come to Florida, and not on election day, because it's over on election day.
When we say the election was stolen, this isn't just rhetoric. It's not sour grapes. These are the facts, and they're irrefutable. Thank you. And as Congresswoman Brown said, this is not just about the felons list. This is about intimidation that took place at the polls. This is about starting rumors in the community. I mean, I interviewed a woman who told me that the word was sent throughout her neighborhood that if you receive any form of government assistance, if you're on food stamps or unemployment or whatever, you're not allowed to vote. Things like that were done, some of the dirty tricks that the Republicans historically have been known for to try and lessen the vote. And we're just not going to allow this to happen this time. And I really want Jeb Bush to know this, that you know, the majority of Americans really resent doing things that would deny the right to vote.
I can't tell you how many people at this convention have come up to me, little children, adults, and said to me, you know, what you said needed to be said. It's what I felt. Somebody needs to speak up for us and know that the election was stolen. It was questions about the election, but the concern is as we move forward that it does not happen again. Our democracy is at stake.
Yeah, show this. Let me just. This is off Greg's computer. This is the current list. This is the current list. Now I challenge every reporter in Florida here to report this story. And if you don't like the challenge, then I issue a humble plea. Whatever it'll take. Lunch. And I just want you to go. I want you just to go to this one page here, Mr. Thomas Cooper. All right. Let me just show you. Can you see all this here? Mr. Thomas Cooper, male, black, and he was convicted on the 30th of January in the year 2007. 2007, right here. Right here. This is the list. This is the state of Florida's list. The intention of this is to make sure that Thomas Cooper doesn't vote.
And look at his race.
And
look at his race.
Oh yeah, it's black.
BLA.
It's all down here.
54% of
Black,
the names
black,
on this list.
black. This is disgraceful.
And I'm a BBC reporter. We put this on BBC television and Guardian newspapers in Britain in November of 2000 with these lists. We couldn't get this into the US press. Thank God for this guy with the baseball hat, because why was this not on the nightly news in the United States of America, my home country? I have to report from exile, and bless the big guy in the chicken suit, because otherwise we wouldn't have our own news.
Mike, what is it exactly you're going to do in Florida on Election Day? You talked kind of a little generally out there, bringing in cameras. What is it precisely that you plan to do?
First of all, I plan to be in Florida in October. I'm not going to wait till Election Day. So I will be traveling the state, and I will be encouraging people to get out and vote, to not be intimidated, and I will have people at my various appearances explaining just how easy it is to vote in the United States of America, and promising them that we will be there. I'm also donating money to this lawyers group to help in travel and any other assistance they need, so that this army of lawyers has the resources to be able to immediately go to court, get a judge, and allow that person to vote by the time the polls close. So we have a number of things planned, and I will release the schedule on my website probably sometime in September.
I have this expression: you can't be too paranoid, you can't be too rich, and you can't be too thin. Right? And life has proven me correct on probably all three. I think the concern is, Jeb Bush put together the felon list. I mean, he was responsible, Michael and Corinne and I just talked to Michael about the idea of maybe him coming down before the August 31st election. I mean, obviously it's a primary, it's a closed primary in Florida, and there is a concern. I think both for Corinne and me, as much as we want to win and as important our races are, there's one race which is more important, and that's who was elected president of the United States. So I think most of the focus has really been on the general election race.
What you're talking about? No one is allowed to speak in a joint session of Congress because not one senator would sign the petition. The signing of that petition wasn't to overturn the election.
No.
It was just to allow them 5 minutes to speak. And Congressman Deutsch said to me on the way in here, if I were senator, I would have signed that piece of paper to give them the right to speak. All it needed was one senator. I remember seeing him on TV all through that month of November and early December, fighting away, not taking it, not your comments about the thousands of Jewish voters for Buchanan, which was one of the more bizarre and absurd elements of this. I mean, we focused a lot on our African American friends, but the Jewish voters of Florida who were denied, they're senior citizens, many of them Holocaust survivors who came to this country believing in the basic principles of one person, one vote. To take that vote away from someone who survived the Holocaust or is a child of a survivor, I sat there and watched that, Congressman Deutsch, and I was so proud of you and the way that you stood up for those elderly citizens who couldn't believe that their votes were being counted for Pat Buchanan. The vote in Florida and in the 5 states in the Deep South, there are 5 Democratic senators that are not running again this year, right? North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, and Louisiana. This is so crucial, and you're right, it's not being talked about very much. It's so important, and I'll tell you why. I'm very optimistic, and I think there's a real strong sense, and even though the polls seem to be close, Kerry is ahead in these polls that are close. And there's a very good chance that he is going to be the next president of the United States. But what good will it be to have a President Kerry if there's a filibuster-proof Senate, where if the Republicans end up with 60 Senate seats, what's going to happen for the next 4 years? If the Republicans are able to grab those 5 Senate seats in the Deep South, it will seriously hamper. And so for all the people who are enthused about Kerry in the White House, his presidency will not have the teeth it needs if we lose these 5 Senate seats. So this Senate seat in Florida is critical. And it's critical that the people of Florida elect somebody who has the courage to stand up in those moments. As John F. Kennedy said, the profiles and courage that are so lacking these days. As Richard Clark pointed out, they really weren't interested in capturing Osama bin Laden. They gave him a 2-month head start. They wouldn't allow our special forces to go into the area where they believed Osama was for 2 months. That's Richard Clark speaking, not Michael Moore. For 2 months. And the focus has never been, the day after September 11th, George W. Bush saying to Richard Clark, what do you got on Iraq? Let's go into Iraq. And Clark is going, what do you mean Iraq? Iraq had nothing to do with this. Yeah, and Bush goes, yeah, okay, but what do you got on Iraq? and he goes, oh, it's Al-Qaeda. Afghanistan. Yeah, but what do you got on Iraq? I mean, the horrible disservice that was done to this country, to our safety, continues, as Congresswoman Brown said, to this day. They refuse to do this. They refuse to do the basic thing that people, all people, regardless of their political stripe, want government to do. Protect the people. They're going to have the premiere in Crawford. Right? No, I'm not going to be there. Yeah, I read that. And initially I was thinking of going, but then the press in Texas started turning it into, Michael Moore. Well, he's like us walking down the hallway here. And I don't want this to be about me. I want it to be about the film and about the people of Crawford who don't have a movie theater, who've written to me over the last month. I think everyone in town has written to me asking to see the movie. And so I've arranged for the Film Society in Austin. The Crawford Peace House has organized this event. And they're coming down with a projector and a big outdoor screen. And they're going to show it. We've invited Mr. Bush to come and be there. Has
he accepted your invitation yet?
No, he hasn't. Which I understand. Oh, look, I'll send him a DVD. I mean, I really just wanted, I want him to see the movie. This is an event. I want the focus down there tonight to be on the Crawford Peace House, which is sponsoring the event, and on the film itself, and not, not what we just saw here.
Are any members of Congress willing to coordinate to invite United Nations elections observers, perhaps even the 5 outgoing Democratic senators you mentioned?
Well, once again, that's why we did our bill. The House members have already written to the UN and asked them to come in. We haven't gotten a response from them. But Alcee Hastings is the chair of a new committee, and they have agreed that they're coming in September. They represent 52 countries. And the point of the matter is that we in America, the members of Congress in particular, go around the world and monitor their elections. I've said it before, I've been to Haiti many times, I've been to Africa, South Africa, Russia. Why is it that we have a different standard? Why is it that we don't want people to come in and monitor our election? We are the beacon of light. We're fighting for democracy. It starts at home.
We are all of a singular mind. We are all on one mission. We are all in the same boat, from the conservative end to the far left end of the Democratic Party. And that mission is to remove George W. Bush from the White House. And we have put aside whatever the particular differences are on policies and issues and things that legislation we'd like to see passed, et cetera, to come together in a way that we've watched the Republicans do this for 2 decades. Now they're going to get a taste of their own medicine. And they're going to find out what it's like when the majority of the country comes together. I mean, you have to ask yourself this question. Do you think John Kerry would invade a country like George Bush has invaded Iraq? I mean, can you actually fathom that happening? I can't. I first saw John Kerry in 1971, growing up in Michigan. I was a teenager, and he came to Detroit with other veterans, and they held the Winter Soldier hearings in Detroit. I don't know if anybody here is old enough to remember that.
I remember.
But all right.
Danny, you're true.
And this is what, if you remember, you have these. And I remember as a 17-year-old watching this and admiring the courage of this individual, a veteran who was there to speak the truth and to bring the truth to the American people about the war. I think he's still that same honorable person. And will operate from a moral place. you know, I've never met the man, and you know, I've not spoken to him or his people, but I just say that on a personal level. The majority of Americans are against this war. The majority of Americans now say the war was a bad idea and we shouldn't have done it. To answer your question about Kerry and the Democrats and why you don't hear that, why don't we just agree that the people, with all due respect to the elected officials here, the people are always ahead of the politicians and the leaders. That's the great thing about our democracy. That's why our founding fathers wanted it to be a nation of equals, because they knew that no one person should be king, and that the people really always had better judgment and trust the people. And I believe the people will move the Democrats and move Kerry to all the positions and actions that they need to take.
Mr. Moore, there are a lot of independent media producers here and the Indymedia centers. Any words of wisdom, encouragement about the independent producers and how we can help out in Florida?
Well, yes, I invite you to join with me, that we all are there. Because let's face it, you know, when I say I'm bringing my cameras, I mean, that may mean 3 cameras. And it's a large state. So we need independent media to set up around the state, to be there at the polls, to capture. You can see the power in Fahrenheit 9/11 when the camera is there, when you have the visual of them turning away African Americans at the polls. I mean, so much, they got away with so much in 2000 simply because there was no visual. And I know African Americans who immediately called the TV station in Jacksonville, called the TV station in Orlando, come down here and see this. And they wouldn't come. They wouldn't come. I don't know, you know, the mainstream media, for some reason, just doesn't want to do its job. And it goes from, on the scale from just journalists being afraid because they've been given the mandate, or they just know instinctually that this isn't going to pass muster, all the way to the fact that we have a weapons manufacturer and a company named General Electric, which already has $600 million of contracts in Iraq, owning one of our major networks. So, and all the problems in between.
They know, I think everybody here knows that, that I said that in 2000 we had an American-style coup d'etat, and that the Republicans stole the election, and they had my words taken down. And I've got to tell you that I only had, listen, 30 seconds, but that turned into hours, and the kind of responses that I have gotten from the people at this convention all over the United States. I've gotten calls from all over the United States constantly. My phone has been ringing off the hook. They said, you said what we felt. They want it said. If you got a problem, you can't solve that problem until you recognize you had a problem. Let me just say one thing. On right after the election, the 2000 election, you had, in Florida, the law said you had 72 hours to ask for a recount. Well, we were going down to the supervisor's office every day, working with them, trying to find out. The whole question was that it was 500 votes, that it was a question, 500. And right after 72 hours, the supervisor of elections was on television. He just casually mentioned that they threw out 27,000 votes. 27,000. And you're talking about 4,000 in West Palm. 27,000 votes, and then they came from precincts, by the way, 7, 8, 9, and 10. This is in my neighborhood that vote 98% Democratic. Nobody said nothing. I couldn't get the media, I couldn't get anybody to focus on what was happening in Duval, and we could not get a count. We could not get a count. They got some equipment from Miami, and they brought it to Florida that would have counted these voters, and they had no intentions to this day to ever count it, because they knew that 27,000 voters that voted in my precinct, 7, 8, 9, and 10, 98% of them was Democratic. And then they said, well, they didn't know how to vote. They've been voting for years before I was born. These people take voting extremely important. And they came up to me and they said, why did you let them steal our vote? That hurt me. and I will never get over it, but I will make sure it will never happen again. I will do all I can. I'll bring in anybody I can to make sure that my voters will not be disenfranchised again. They may steal votes, but they will not do it in my area.
That's right. That is right, and I am with her.
Pathologically lying and racial profiling, deep injustice under wraps. Pathologically lying and racial profiling, deep injustice under wraps. Oh, and puppets are outlawed, only outlaws have puppets here in the US of A. If there's a boob in the White House, then why not injustice? It's the American way. If there's a boob in the White House, then why not injustice? It's the American way.
The intention of this is to make sure that Thomas Cooper doesn't vote. Black, 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 black. This is disgraceful.
The voices have the feelings of his children.
Well, you know what, honey? Silence is golden. You should keep your mouth shut.